Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am, of course, Brigid Burke, and this is my daily show that's fairly new, that just is basically me doing a morning reading for everybody, but also giving some discussions of some topics that come up around my coaching or questions that I've been asked and things like that I want to share with people. And so I will, and good morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about different topics that have come up. Usually first thing in the morning is the time when my brain is the most active. I wake up and I sit down and I always have my coffee. And when I'm having my coffee, I am like, my brain runs at 100 miles an hour, sometimes in directions. There's some days when I actually have to record what's going on my mind because I know by later in the day I'm not gonna, I'll be immersed in some other kind of a task and I won't be paying any attention to it. So I thought, let's harness that energy for a morning program. And so far, people do seem to like this, so I've gotten a lot of good feedback privately, messages and stuff, and sometimes phone calls from people who have said, "Hey, I really like this thing you're doing in the morning." So I'm glad people are enjoying it. I hope people continue to enjoy it. And of course, if anybody has any thoughts or anything they want me to talk about or whatever, then I'm always happy to take suggestions. The only questions I've had so far have not been so much around coaching stuff per se. I had somebody has asked me, so I got asked repeatedly on both channels about these two rings that I wear all the time. And these rings are what I call guide rings. They're not, somebody asked me if I was married. I'm like, no, because in the video it flips. It looks like this is on my left hand when it's actually on my right. These are what I call my guide rings. So I wear one ring for each of my major spirit guides. It's kind of like a connecting thing for me, because the way I connect with my guides is, there's different ways that people do it. I've had one guide I've connected with probably since I was in high school, maybe a little older. And the other I've been connecting with more recently. And my two guides are Macha and Azrael. So they're my two main guides. And those can shift, I think, throughout a lifetime. I've had other guides that have kind of come and, done whatever they were going to do, and then they've kind of left. But these two are the main ones. And they sort of represent, they're symbolic to me of a connection that I have, which is... you might think of it as mediumistic because it is like a channeling, but I tend to think of myself more as a vehicle, not in a possession sense, maybe sort of. I don't know. It's sort of like almost like I feel like I'm the car and they're the driver, And I talk about this in my book Phantom Queen, which hopefully is going to come out later this year. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, I have connected with Theon about that book this year. Those of you who don't know about that on this channel, people on Katonia know about this book. It's a book about the goddess Morrigan, the Irish goddess of war and sovereignty. And they had asked me to do a book on her based on my relationship with her. So it's partially academic and it's partially practical, where I try to discuss my relationship there with her and where that came from. As I mentioned on yesterday's live stream, all of this kind of stuff is things that have come to me and not things that I have looked for. Because I know there's times people who practice paganism, they will look to work with certain deities, or they will, explore that. But these are things that have come up, in very, and not in just, I don't know. If you look at where you look outside and you see, like for example, if I had looked outside and saw a crow and said, "Oh, that's the Morrigan talking to me," it's not that kind of a thing. It's far more intense than that. So that's why I wear those two all the time, because they represent that connection. And it's just like people might have sigils, or you might write something on your hand. This is just, that's what reminds me. So what was I going to talk about today? It's a rather dreary day here, but it's kind of okay. It's kind of like a foggy English morning, which I kind of like sometimes. Some days I just get tired of looking at it, but today it's kind of, I don't know if you noticed this, but I think there's some days when there's fog and then there's fog. It's like there's humidity and then there's humidity. There's some that just feel sticky and oppressive, and then there's other times that it just seems kind of refreshing and mysterious, I guess. I don't know. This seems to be one of the latter mornings, so I'm okay with that. So what I wanted to talk about today, in thinking about this morning, I was thinking about, there was a couple of different themes that had come up here. And sort of with respect to in respect to some things like initial readings that I did this morning for myself, there was definitely this idea around. I did a live stream yesterday about strength, about having strength, and this was in on the Katonia channel. I did it. No, it was 2 days ago now. I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday. I was thinking it was Monday that I had done this live stream where I talked about concepts of strength. And one thing I think about, just because I see it coming up over and over again, was Kristi Noem, the South Dakota governor, who has a new biography coming out where she writes about taking her dog outside and just because she doesn't like it, and she just basically shoots it. And people, of course, obviously have weighed in with different opinions on that. She's tried to backpedal it and try to say, oh no, this is just part of farm life. Sometimes you have to kill animals. And the reality is, and I'm just going to say it flat out, in order to do that, you have to be a psychopath. In order to just simply take an animal that, it's okay. It's not a case of, okay, putting down a sick animal, which I'm not sure legally if you're really allowed to take your animal out and shoot it. But I mean, I don't know what South Dakota laws are. Secondly, it's like she did it, and then she went after the goat, and then just decided, I don't like this goat either, it's ugly, I'm going to put it in a pit and shoot it. That's not putting an animal down because it's sick, and that's not like, oh, I need to kill this animal for food, or it's not, I'm killing this animal because it's attacking me. She's tried to kind of turn it into that with her dog. She was like, oh, the dog, he was attacking chickens, he probably would have attacked my children. But he never actually did that. He was just an untrained puppy. And the fact that somebody could take their puppy out and shoot it, it's just, that doesn't make you, that's not you, the reason I think I bring it up is because she's talking about it in terms of, well, this is what, this is the facts of nature. I'm like, well, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. You're not shooting it because for survival reasons. You're shooting it or for normal farm business. Like if you have, and secondly, you wouldn't take your animals out and shoot them for meat anyway. That's just, I guess if you were hunting in the woods, you might do that. But that's not what you're doing. You just don't like this animal, and you're going to put it down yourself. And basically that's her attitude. If I don't like an animal, I think I'm just going to shoot it. And that's a psychopathology. And what's interesting is that she's doing it and she's saying it, and I think she's saying it with the idea of trying to make herself appear very tough and very masculine. I'm a woman, just like she had told this lie about meeting Kim Jong-un, about he had met a woman like me before. And okay, as somebody who works in the realm of gender in the sense of masculine, feminine, actually archetypal masculine and feminine categories, that's kind of what I do. And especially with what I call the dark feminine, this aspect of the feminine that is often in shadow, a lot of people think of the dark feminine as something that is just like, bitchy, and it's like, well, no, it's not about that. That's about the aspect of you that is angry because it's been betrayed and because your sovereignty has often been compromised. That's where a lot of dark feminine energy comes from. Dark feminine energy can also be destructive. Okay, but it's generally not it's destructive because there's a center of something that's not holding. If you look at mythologies of destruction, like that of Kali, for instance, that destruction is coming about because there is an untenable situation in the Durga Saptashati, which is one of the big epics about Durga and Kali, the Hindu deities that are often, they're not necessarily exactly the same, but the way the Hindu gods are, they're all sort of interconnected in their own ways. But it's about the way in which we destroy, in which things are, have to be torn down. Similar to the Tower card. Something has to be torn down because it's false. Okay, so those are the elements that we're looking at there. Just saying, I'm basically what she's saying there is I'm a woman who can act without emotion and without feeling and quote unquote like a man, which gets back to the talk that I had given on the other channel about strength. I'm like, you're strength. That is not a sign of strength. Somebody who has to walk around with a gun all the time threatening to shoot people is somebody who's scared to death. Okay, if you're on the defensive, if you're living in like an apocalyptic hellscape all the time, then there's something you need to reevaluate about your life. But to me, the fact that it's absolutely no big deal to her to take an animal out, an innocent animal. I mean, even one understanding, even if it's an animal that annoys you, and just shooting it, there's a psychopathology to that because what's been shown is that especially with, okay, if you take a child, if you have a child who thinks that they're going to, I remember this actually when I was in middle school. We did have somebody in our class who was like capturing, like torturing rabbits or something really horrible like that. And this kid was taken and put away for evaluation because because they basically said if he would do that, this is the same kind of kid who could be a serial killer later. There's a pathology to it that is not cool, and I'm not suggesting that she's going to become a serial killer, but she definitely is somebody with that you have to have like no empathy to be able to do that. And that's a rather concerning trait in somebody who's a leader. That's not a quality of leadership, but it's almost like she's trying to prove, herself to the boys, like, look, I can be tough. And it's like, you're not tough. You are actually somebody who is fighting for acceptance, fighting for masculine acceptance. That's pretty much what you're doing, but in a way that's just really profoundly disturbing. So anyway, that was kind of my thought on that. And it kind of, when we talk about strength and about recovery and about feelings and about things like that, one of the things that came up for me today in this morning's readings, there was a couple of different images. Like I have the image here of the Postponement card, okay, which is the Four of Swords in the Tarot. And one of the things that, it's funny because I'm looking out at this gray day, and what we see is a person who, there's this very colorful picture in the middle, but the woman here is only looking at the gray part. So that's kind of another way of looking at the Four of Swords, which is usually a card of saying I'm recovering from something. It's usually in the Rider-Waite deck. I do have the Rider-Waite deck here, but rather than look for the card, it shows like a knight laying down with his sword there, and there are three swords hanging on the wall, and there's a window, excuse me, and he's just laying there, almost like either in a pose of resting or of, well, really it could be a pose of death too. But there's like a resting that's going on there. He's sitting there resting, and the idea is there that this is like a timeout. This is a withdrawal, like from after some kind of sorrow or some kind of separation or some kind of loss. There's like a timeout that somebody takes. This is calling it the card of postponement, though, because it's focusing on the other end of the spectrum where we say, okay, I have, it's getting very dark in here all of a sudden, but I think it's because it's going to rain. It's more of the idea of we do take a time out to rest, and we do need that, but oftentimes sometimes when we can get stuck in that state for a very, very long time. There's a way in which we are in an emotional state, and I often say, especially when somebody is in a state where they are angry about something, like if there has been a separation, okay? This is what I used to say about breakups and relationships. People would say, I remember years and years ago, there was somebody who I had broken up with, and under circumstances that made me really, really angry. And I talked to a mutual friend, and that mutual friend to me said, oh, don't be angry at him because he's just stupid. And I said, I'm going to be angry at him until I'm not, is what I said to her. And yeah, again, this was a really long time ago, but I said, I'm going to be angry until I'm not, because I felt like, no, I'm never going to let go of this person if I just try to push it back, or if I try to fluff it off. That's why when people sometimes have ideas of forgiveness, where they will say, well, in order to forgive a person, you have to, like I used to hear those things when the days when I actually would go to church, when there would be the homily, and the person would say, like the priest would, we had this one priest who I just couldn't stand, but he would get up and he would talk about, the woman who truck driver killed her child, and then when she went to the hospital, the truck driver was there, and he was so apologetic because it was an accident, and she said, well, as a mother I can't forgive you, but as a Christian I will. And it's like, I did not like that story because I said, no, I mean, yeah, the guy didn't do it on purpose, okay? And that's the one side of it, is that a lot of times people don't do things to intentionally hurt you. They do it out of their own sense of judgment and where they are. And, so a lot of times people, unless they're a psychopath, which I was just kind of talking about before, you're not really seeking to hurt people intentionally. Most of the time when we have hurt other people ourselves, because wounding, it's one of the dream cards that I have, wounding. They said, expect that if you are alive, you are going to be wounded, right? That something's going to happen to you. And generally it's not done, probably 95% of the time it's not done with malice. But when this happens, and it doesn't matter. I mean, and even if, like in a relationship situation, if you have somebody who's, double dealt you or done something, then you, or has done something that is a betrayal, you need to have time to process that betrayal, because if you don't, then, you never really properly let it go. It's kind of like, yeah, I forgive you, through gritted teeth. You're not really forgiving the person. You're just trying to say, well, look at me. The ego is saying, I'm better because, but the thing is, the reality is you haven't let it go. You've just repressed it. It's like people who are, I do liken it to sometimes the rhetoric of some people who say that they are saved. I remember talking about this in a religion class years ago, where they said, well, people who want to come around and tell you about the day they were saved and who want to save you. It's like, the problem is, especially if they've lived a very, let's say, morally questionable lifestyle before that, or at least in their own mind they have. And maybe they have, I used to see those people come in to talk, well, I used to be a drug dealer and I was on the street and did this and now I found Jesus, and, yeah, you would hear that kind of stuff. And the thing is, it's like, okay, on one hand, okay, maybe it's good that you're not doing the destructive thing anymore, but I would not say that you were saved from it. I would just say that you've the problem is then Jung has talked about this, you put it to the back of your mind, and then you end up projecting it out onto other people, because the thing is, when it's consciously in front of you, now you see it, okay? You can see it in front of your face. If you try to push it out of your mind, now it becomes a point of projection, because you always project unconscious content. That's the stuff you can't see. So then you look around and everybody around you is a sinner, because in your own mind, that's what you are, or that's not what you've stopped being, in spite of the fact that you've kind of decided that this is what it is. And as a result, you think that you have something to say to everybody else. Oh, you can probably hear the rain now. It's to everybody else, but but you haven't really healed yourself, I guess is the point. Which is why I always advocate an approach of, you've got to kind of look at, as much as we don't want to, we really do want to look at that material, because otherwise it's almost like we're condemned to repeat it. We're condemned to have it revisit us over and over again. Now, the postponement card here has a lot to do with the ways in which we tend to see only the negative of a situation and not the positive. And that's another aspect of this this kind of self-critical thing that we do. You're only looking at what's bad and not at what's good. Ooh, that is getting loud. I have skylights up here. So now I'll have a little bit of some background noise here. But it's the idea that a lot of times we do have bright prospects. We do have things going for us. We have friends. We have situations. And, and instead of seeing the good stuff that we have here, we're looking too much over here at what still isn't the way that we want it, or what's in the past that's something that at some point we need to let go of. And I think that's the point of me bringing up the other stuff, is just that at some point you need to we need to focus on. I think that's why they talk about gratitude practice, because it's kind of like, well, look, what is it? What do you have? What do you have to work with? Work from that place rather than the place of, oh, well, I did this in the past and it failed. Oh, I lost this. Because you're going to still have hurts. And I should also mention that I don't feel like a lot of this is a linear process, okay? You're not, it's not like, oh, here's the hurt, here's the processing of the hurt, here's the outcome. It doesn't typically work like that. You may have a hurt, you may initially have a period where you feel like, you've dealt with it, but then it'll just keep coming back. And it comes back and it comes back, or you'll feel good at certain times, and then other times it'll just feel like a kick in the teeth, like, or all of a sudden, like, you'll have a dream at night, or you'll see somebody or hear something will remind you of a situation, and it'll trigger you. It's not a linear process. It kind of goes all over the place, and you could have things that happened years ago, and then all of a sudden one day they come and revisit you for whatever reason, and you're like, where did that come from? I thought I buried that a long time ago, or I thought that was dead and buried a long time ago. But they do come up. And so you have to recognize it's a dynamic process, and it is a matter of looking at what that bigger picture is, because those wounds are always going to be there. And the question is, it's a key of not really wanting to have our wounds define our life and where we're going to go with that. And that just sort of the last thing I want to mention before I do the full reading is the other card that came up for me this morning is, really it's the New Vision card in this deck, okay? But that's traditionally is the Hanged Man. Now the Hanged Man, one thing that's noticeable about him is that he's got like a number 4 with his legs. Now number 4 in tarot has to do with that which is stable, okay, which is not changing, which, either you're satisfied with where you are or you're afraid to let go of where you are. Okay, and oh yeah, this is a thunderstorm. This is cool. So you have but you notice that he's got the halo around his head. This is almost supposed to be like a St. Peter representation. So he's a figure who is enlightened, or you can think about Odin on Yggdrasil, on the tree of life, hanging upside down, because Odin hangs upside down by his foot. But there's a element here of that one is enlightened by hanging upside down. And that 4, could represent a balancing point too, but it can also represent the need for transition to another stage. That's why in this deck they refer to it as the card of New Vision. The idea is that you see things in its height and its depth. So really the task there when people see the Hanged Man, and I've been getting it for a lot of people recently, whether I'm doing general readings on my channel, whether I've been doing stuff for clients, I see the Hanged Man a lot, and I didn't see it for myself. And the Hanged Man is really about the way, it can have to do with stuckness, but it can also have to do with what we need to give up to move forward, how we need to be empty again to become full. But oftentimes it's a matter of standing on your head, and that's actually a very puzzling thing for a lot of people. How do you take another perspective on something? Because if you're in a particular situation where you're in a bind, let's just say it's somebody. I'm just giving I'm just making up a random example off the top of my head. Let's just say you lost a job that you've had for years, and now let's just say you're older and you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get back in the workforce. I don't know what I'm going to do, and then you kind of start to obviously freak out about that, because obviously that's a cataclysmic thing, and you can become stuck in a place of feeling helpless and out of control of your situation. But the question then becomes, in connection with that postponement card, is just like, well, can you look at, okay, what are the things here? And I don't want to make it about positive thinking, but what are the advantages that you have here? What are the opportunities? Was this a job that that sucked? And it's taking the life out of you, and now it's like, okay, maybe this is the way, the broader picture, the universe's way of saying, maybe it's time for you to move on. As scary as that is, and as much as it feels like a loss, maybe it's time for you to consider doing something new. Maybe you don't just have to get another job doing the thing you did. And a lot of people will do that, and they'll say, well, yeah, I have 20 years experience in this, so this is what I have to do. And I'm like, well, have to is kind of a, it may be an opportunity for you to move into a space, especially as we get older. I find too, especially doing astrology charts, that the kind of thing that's in your natal chart, I like Vedic astrology because there's a chart called the Navamsha, which is the D9 chart, which talks about you like age 35 and after. They call it the spouse chart, but it doesn't necessarily, it can have to do with the spouse if you are getting married, but if you're not, it just really has to do with life after age 35. And the Navamsha tells you what your focus is going to be, and often it can be very different from what you had in the first half of life. Or there could be a revisiting, now that, especially if you have, like me, I was born with a lot of Saturn, like right out of the gate. I was born into what they call Saturn Mahadasha. And so you start life with a lot of, I don't know, I guess I had a very, very good childhood in a lot of ways, but I also had a lot of challenges and traumas. And it's almost like this gives you a chance to go back and say, okay, now you have a chance to kind of be that person that you were. If Saturn really hasn't affected you in the first half of life, then by the second half, that might be the time when you are coming to terms with that. But Saturn is often considered to be like an enemy planet when you're younger, but your friend when you're older. Point being is that the perspective flips, things change. And what maybe was an ill for you when you were at one point, maybe now may be something that's a blessing for you. So, let's move on. I'm sure, Bob, you're looking for me to get into my morning reading. So let's see how the cards feel today about everything I've just talked about and what people need to know. Lightning. I didn't know I knew there was going to be rain this morning. I didn't know it was going to be a thunderstorm, but I love thunderstorms. So that's totally fine by me. I never like to put, that's the other thing too. I don't like to, when it's this, after the sun's come up, I don't like natural light in my, unnatural light in my room. I leave lights off a lot in my house because I don't, unless I really need them, because I don't like, I have, like I said, I have skylights, I have a lot of open windows. I like to have natural light. I don't know, that's just a thing of mine. So, let's see. Okay. So what do people viewing this need to know today? All right, let's see what Osho Zen has to say. Ooh, okay. I always say that when I pull a card, right? I'm always surprised by the first card somehow. All right, this is interesting. So let me give this a thought. Actually, this connects very well into what I just said. Okay, so the first card, now this card, every time I get this card, if I'm doing a reading for a person, people kind of immediately get their back up. It is the laziness card. Okay, now this is the Nine of Cups. Now now talk about a different perspective, because in the regular Rider-Waite deck or any other traditional tarot, Nine of Cups is the wish card. That's the card of satisfaction, of personal satisfaction, of having everything that you want. Laziness, though, seems to indicate, as you see, there's a guy here who's like sitting here enjoying his like pina colada on the beach kind of thing, although he's not really on a beach. He's in this kind of black and white checkered room. But you can see there's this breaking up that's going on behind him. And I think what it's saying is that we may have points of satisfaction in our life, but at some point we need to pick up and keep going. Okay, like we have peaceful stops along the way, but then generally there's more work to be done, or there's more something. We're moving on to something. But I often see this card in the reverse, because I don't necessarily think this is a case of somebody being lazy. I think it's more of a case that we think that we're being lazy. What I said about productivity the other day, I'm not doing enough. Oh my God, this result hasn't manifested yet. I've got to work harder. I got to dig this ditch deeper. I got to do whatever. I've got to work harder. And so to me, I feel more like it's an attitude that we have that we're being lazy, okay? And that we have to always be doing. And that was another thing I had talked about in that other live stream, was that, you don't, connecting with feminine energy means allowing yourself to be passive some of the time and allowing yourself to stop and to enjoy things. You're not being lazy by wanting to take time out to enjoy yourself. Okay, but a lot of times that's the feeling that we have to keep going. And like the postponement card, maybe there are times when it's like, okay, you don't want to stagnate in one particular spot. And obviously the meaning of that's people who are watching, it'll resonate with them one way or the other. But to me, when I see this card, I think it's more that we think, it could be that we are in a situation where, actually the phrase that just popped in my head is, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? It's maybe time to move towards something. But it can also be a sense of don't beat yourself up over being lazy. I feel like there's that element of it too, because we all need pauses and breaks. We need leisure time. We need that. That's part of life. We're told that that's not part of life. Every minute of every day has to be meaningful. And the reality is it doesn't. You can do something completely, actually doing mindless things is probably not a bad thing, because we're too much in our mind a lot of the time. Okay, our inner feeling is the rebel, which is the emperor. So the Emperor on this card, you see he's breaking his chains in this one. Okay, so this is the idea that internally, yeah, that's the idea that I don't want to follow the system. I don't want to do it the same way. I want to carve my own path. Now, carving your own path is difficult. It does take some work because you are inventing your own way. It's not like you're simply following somebody else's way. So there's definitely this rebellious energy that's the unfelt thing. When there's that unease and dissatisfaction, that one feeling like one needs to move. And in that sense, the laziness card could also mean complacency. Like, well, I'm in this job. It's an easy job. I can do it every day. So yeah, I feel like I should change, but I don't know. I mean, this is kind of comfortable, but there's this element of rebellion here. Okay. External feeling, of which it says, is more conscious, is the traveling card. This is the Eight of Wands. Okay, and this card indicates things moving without you having to plan too much. Okay, so, and again, it's not a major arcana, but it does seem to say to us that, life is moving. Life, we are getting messages from whatever, inner voice, what's reflected back to us from the external world. Whatever it is, we're getting messages that are telling us it's time to move forward with something, okay? that things are moving. And sometimes when traveling comes up, like in the more traditional decks, the Eight of Wands can be speed, and sometimes people are afraid of that speed. They're like, whoa, I want to slow down. I want to take this slow. But it does seem to indicate that things are moving, and I think maybe in this center card is, I feel like I should be doing something about this. Like that's the kind of energy of it. And this is the same card I got, I think, the other day, which is the Sun card. It's the Innocence card, okay? Again, going back to beginner's mind, so to speak. Going back to the sense of, and that really does tie in with the Hanged Man theme that I was talking about, because it's like, okay, take a different perspective on things. You may be taking the, I'm like the reluctance to change is because, well, I've been doing it this way for a long time. This is where my experience is. And beginner's mind says, well, be willing to start over, to do something different, right? And your outcome card here is compromise. Six of Pentacles. Now, again, that's also a different view of the Six of Pentacles. Six of Pentacles is a complicated card because it's about give and take. Usually it shows somebody giving charity to somebody else. So the question is, are you giving the charity? Is charity being given to you? Is there an equal give and take? And is it a situation where you should be giving? That's the traditional meaning. Compromise card says that we are somehow compromising our truth. So in some way, in some situation, okay, the message seems to be, the question you want to ask is there a situation that you know should change, but you feel really comfortable, so you're really reluctant to do that? Like the idea, it's back to the devil you know, right? I would rather stay where I am rather than make a change because I'm afraid to make this change, okay? So yeah, that's interesting. That's the reading for today. And change is not easy. That is why I do the kind of work that I do with people, because a lot of times we talk about sovereignty and freedom, and people talk about freedom like, yeah, I want to be free. And in one sense, we do. We don't want other people controlling us in any kind of very authoritarian kind of way. But by the same time, we also don't want to be free, because it's easier if we can walk into somebody else's pre-made structure and just learn it. That is definitely the easier way to go. When we feel like our inner voice or our guides or life or the universe, whatever, God, whatever, however you conceive of that, is pushing you towards something else, or life circumstances are pushing you towards something else. We may be saying, we may want to postpone it. Yeah, okay. So back to why these cards were the ones I felt like I had to talk about today. We may want to postpone it because we're saying, we may be looking at but look how much work is involved in that. Oh, if I want to, let's just say if you were going to leave a job and you wanted to start a business. Well, yeah, but starting my own business, I got to focus on accounting and marketing, and I got to do this. Oh, I don't have money to hire you. Oh, I don't have this. I don't have that. Oh, God, that's, it's just so much easier to just, as much as I hate my job, to get up and show up every day. Or even if we're doing something, we could get comfortable with what we're doing and then just say, well, I think it doesn't feel like there's some kind of an impetus here to adjust something. Whether that's a major adjustment or a minor one. So take that as it resonates for you. I do hope that makes sense. And so that's pretty much what I have in the reading for today. I didn't pull my other cards down, so let me just do a quick cartouche for you, because I like to try to do 2 on these. And then I'm going to, then we'll finish up. I want to thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it very much. And yeah, again, if you missed any part of this, the whole thing is going to be up here on IG and then later on YouTube. So, what do we have here? Yeah, and oh my goodness, we're ending with the Buckle of Isis, which is like the Hanged Man of the cartouche. It's interesting. Yeah, Isis, a situation that may need nurturing, that may need attention, that may need care. Okay. And anxiety that comes up around that. With Lotus, that usually comes up when we need to calm the mind about something, when we need to center ourselves, when we need to look at it from a perspective, almost a detached perspective, like the perspective of meditation, where you watch what goes by in your mind, like almost like you're watching a movie, or like it's just scrolling, like your thoughts are scrolling by you. You don't try to stop your thoughts, but you just observe them. You don't participate in them, right? Now, the factor to be considered, yeah, Sphinx would indicate something that's hidden, okay? So there's a lot of excavation going on for people. I think a lot of the change that people are being pushed towards to make big changes in their life, maybe in their job, could be in something else, could be in a relationship, could be something else. But it's a result of things that are being excavated, things that are coming up, okay? Sphinx has to do with what is hidden. And it also indicates a passivity. You know, the factor to be considered is that we may have been being very passive about something. But Bast ultimately says not only follow your intuition, but, you know, this is the happiness card. You wanna connect with others. You want to do what makes you happy. And you want to, if your intuition is telling you to do something, that's what you want to focus on. And yeah, it's saying that efforts that you do make towards this change will be rewarded. So yeah, I feel like those readings really support each other. So the message for today really seems to be, if there's a change you know you need to make, then, you know, this is saying look at all the opportunity that you have, rather than seeing it as like, oh, you know, this may be work I have to do, and it's safer for me to stay where I'm at. There may be a sense of, but with the traveling card, it's saying, you know, you're not moving necessarily into dangerous territory. You're moving, as it says, you don't have to plan too much. It's almost like it'll just come to you. You know, this is you just, you're going to move into a space, and because it's the right time, things will fall into place. So I hope this reading was helpful. I hope my little spiels on this live stream, because like I said, they're random. I just do what comes up in the morning, and then I do the readings. So I hope the stuff I'm talking about actually is beneficial, and that it resonates with you. And I want to thank you guys very much for joining me. I appreciate it. And yeah, I haven't switched to the 7 a.m. time slot yet, but I may start doing that. And the only reason I haven't is because I've had so much going on. I've got papers to grade today and stuff. So it might be next week that I switch to 7 a.m. Or maybe it might even be tomorrow. But whatever it is, I will post it on Instagram first to let people know about the time change. So look out for that. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great, it's hump day, I guess. Have a great Wednesday and rest of your week. Well, you will see me tomorrow if you do tune in. And I will see you again soon. Take care.